Hey, welcome to another Buckeye Review news update. My name is Dr. Mike McNair, and I want to do a shout out to our listeners, readers, followers. We have subscribers in 200 cities and 26 states, emanating from Youngstown to Mahoning Valley. But we are certainly appreciative of all those who have been faithful to the core of who we are, giving news to the African American community and general circulation news since 1937. No, I haven't been around that long, but I have been around the Buckeye Review for almost 30 years. So we're trying to expand, and we want to do a shout out to Method 8 and Brian West, who's helping us lead our production team. And I want to do a shout out to my special guest today, Mr. Jimma McWilson. We want to talk a little bit about the research that you've been doing, Mr. McWilson, on the Youngstown City Schools and African American students in particular. I know you've been working on it for quite some time. I've attended numerous press conferences, did a couple of stories, but I know recently there was a press conference done by the NACP, and it was a community group of educators that come together on a team. Right. You want to talk about that so people can know the core of the research team and some of the conclusions?
So, Mike, given that you know more about this than I do from working on the inside, that inside view, the purpose of the press conference on Thursday was to fulfill a promise from July 26th of 2021, when the task force that I'd been working on putting together for the previous 3 months at the local level did its inaugural press conference. The whole idea was to create a historical narrative, and that is to not wait a year to find out what was going on within the district. And not only not to wait a year, but to not wait a year to get information from the state. But what is the district doing on a quarterly basis?
So let me interrupt you real quick. So you were on the task force for the state of Ohio for African American, closing the achievement gap for African Americans, right. But then there's a local task force as well?
Well, I worked on the local task force because Youngstown is rated really the worst school district in the state. Out of 609 school district, Youngstown is rated number one at the bottom, the wrong end, not the top. And so consequently, the reason I'm back here in Youngstown is when I returned from Vietnam, my mother asked me out of the blue, for some reason, would you come back, because I was in San Diego, when you raise the kids, because I was a single parent for 12 years with five kids, and help these kids get a better education. Now, I said yes. One, because I wouldn't be alive if she hadn't said yes, so I felt compelled. But to be honest with you, I had no clue what she was asking me. I mean, I had experience in, elementary school, middle school, high school. I didn't know anything about a district or board or superintendent. I went to school. But for some reason or other, she felt compelled to ask that question. I naturally said yes, and then I was gone. What I did find out in doing the research, though, is I went back to figure out when she asked me that question. And it was actually in 1968. And the way I found out, I was working with the main library, a librarian, looking for some specific materials. And one of those materials was, if you remember Laugh-In?
Yes, going to more.
Right. If you Google Laugh-In,
okay,
you will find Youngstown got that fickle finger
of fate.
And that's right, because the Youngstown story was covered nationwide. And the reason was that they closed all the schools in Youngstown, all of them, the day before Thanksgiving in 1968. And Governor Rhodes at the time would not give them a loan. There were 27,000 kids in Youngstown City schools, public schools at the time. There were 20,000 kids in parochial schools at that time. And I think 3 of the tax levies had failed because the west side and the north side refused to vote. And so that's why it went down. And the reason why they were in the hole, according to the nationwide study, the nationwide reporting, was that those people on the south side and those people on the east side kept demanding tutoring and counseling for their kids, and so they overspent money trying to provide these minorities with that South. So this is all the way back in 1968.
Okay.
So what must have happened in my mind is the kids must have been out of school. That means that she was seeing them more often. They were learning from her children, my brothers and sisters, while they weren't in school. And I came home in the midst of all of that, not knowing that was going on. And that's why she asked, because the kids weren't getting any education.
Oh, I got you.
And she valued education. She had a 7th grade education. She had been a maid most of her life. But education was the thing. I couldn't go to the fields because I had to go to school. That was rock bottom. And then it dawned on me, and then it took off. Everything took off from there. And so that's how I got back, because that's one I never come back to.
So 68 was a pretty big year in America.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, there was, a lot of, racial strife.
That's right.
There was
Tanks up
riots.
on the hill, up on
There was a lot going on. And so, I mean, I wasn't in Youngstown then, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you were in any city in America in 1968, you saw some things
going
going
on,
down.
yeah.
But you're in particular with the racial strife that
Right.
was occurring at the time. You came back to look at education.
Yeah, but I
because-
wasn't involved in that. I didn't know anything about that because I always came home to see Mom,
Sure.
stayed with Mom. Anybody who wanted to see me had to come to Mom's.
Nice.
And then I was on the plane and gone.
Going back to San
Hey,
Diego.
I was gone. So I still wasn't into what was going here because I had promised myself I'd never return to Youngstown.
Did they have riots in San Diego?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice out there. Huh?
Well, no, my explanation for what was going on in San Diego was that most of the black people had been bitten by the tsetse fly. And if you're familiar with the tsetse fly on the continent, it's what's called a sleeping sickness. And I
Okay.
thought they were all asleep. The sun was out, warm, spread out, beautiful city. You don't want to admit that you
Nothing's wrong. It's
nothing-
nice.
It's
The
all
weather's
good.
good.
It's all good. I mean,
Nice.
what's going on? So when I started doing the same thing there, based upon something that happened to my youngest daughter who wanted to be a lawyer, and I went to the NAACP, I went to the Urban League. I was trying to get help. I went to the school board, couldn't get help. So I just organized parents and rented a place, got some computers. I taught them what the laws were about. Most people didn't know that we're half asleep. Youngstown at that time was under an integration order.
Okay.
Yeah, had been filed in 1966, came to court in 67. They needed case law. It didn't come up on the docket until 1977. Initial orders came down in 1980, 81, 82.
So this is
83.
basically a slow-moving train after Brown versus Board of Education,
Oh, yes.
1954.
In the beautiful downtown San Diego.
So 1954, let's not segregate America anymore.
Right,
Let's not segregate the schools anymore.
right.
And yet, it was 60s, 70s. I remember the busing issues, in Boston. That was the 80s.
Yeah. So looking at that case and reading, it was called Carlin v. Board of Education. And what happened to my daughter was, in real quick fashion, she was going to a school that, she was in private school. She and the girlfriends wanted to go to the public school that we were working on because think of East and call it Lincoln High School in San Diego.
Okay.
Same thing, right? And they thought, if, as parents, we were being hypocritical. We were trying to improve the public school, but they're in private school. So they wanted to go to the school to show that they could get a good education. So to say the least, our worst nightmares came to be realized because they did go. And we began to get a serious amount of threats The police advised us that we would have to move to be able to protect the family. Yeah, this is in beautiful downtown San Diego.
Oh my.
So we had to move, and then we had to move her, let's say, we moved her from East to Canfield High School. I mean, that's the kind of jump. In
Okay.
the same school district, right? In the same school district.
Mm-hmm.
So in moving her to that school, at the end of the semester, the beginning of the next semester, her first 6 weeks, she got 1A in AP history, because she was taking all college prep, and then she got 5 Fs. And this was a 3.68 student in all college prep in AP courses. So to say the least, she was devastated. I went to the school, superintendent, lawyer, just let's do this. And I asked the AP teacher, well, how did she get an A in your course? She said, well, she was prepared. I mean, that's all I can tell you. She was prepared. She was on time, she was on target, and that was it. The math teacher said that he was going to speak for the others where she got an F. And he said, well, Mr. McWilson, she truly is a 3.68 college prep student with what they taught her. And what I said was, what do you mean with what they taught her? He says, well, our school covered 9 chapters in the first semester. The school she came from covered 4 chapters. Now listen to this. I'm president of the PTA. I'm chair of the school site council. I'm at the school, if I'm at the school either 4 to 5 days a week, all the time, either going to work, coming from work, stopping by at lunch, just
An active parent.
I'm an active parent. I know my stuff.
But it sounds pretty.
But my question was,
out of
how did
place.
I not know she only covered 4 chapters?
So
how
was
would
this
a,
your- was
how would
this
a parent know that, right?
Yeah. So this was your personal realization about
That-
the disparity in schools and how they
That's right.
teach children.
All
and
of
so,
a
the
sudden-
children get the short end
Yeah.
because they don't know. They're just doing what they're told, and yet they come up short on college prep,
Yep.
on expectations for the future, on state report cards, national rankings, etc.
Whole 9 yards.
Okay.
So I say to the superintendent, I don't want to leave her in this school anymore. So it's like pulling her back out of Canfield and bringing her back east.
Okay.
I meet with all the teachers, the principal, same lawyer, everybody. And I said, okay, I need this explanation. And the one teacher says, I'm speaking for everybody here. We love the kids. We want them to do well. However, they're behind. And so we can't rush ahead because they can't handle it. I said, so why couldn't you do what's called differentiated teaching? The ones that are here, give them more work while you go over here and work with the ones who need it. In any case, my daughter comes home the next week and she said, Dad, there's something wrong with my Spanish class. And I says, yeah, you completed Spanish 1 last year. You did well. She says, yeah, but we have Spanish 1 book again this year. Go back to what was said before. The teacher told her that the reason they were in Spanish 1 book in the second year as opposed to Spanish 2, this is a Spanish person, was because they only finished half of the book and they were going to finish the second half of Spanish 1 book to qualify for Spanish 2. And that did it. I actually stopped working, talked to my wife, and I said, I need to understand education the way I understand medicine. This is a whole new language. So I took a year off. I went to every meeting I could go to, every board meeting I could go to. I read everything I could read on it. That's how I stumbled up on the fact that there was a court order. They were under court order. I decided to organize parents. I couldn't talk to the NAACP or the Urban League into getting involved. And I said, okay, we'll do it. So I organized parents, got parents up to speed, explained to them there's going to be retaliation. So some dropped out and some didn't. And we sued, at that time, the 6th largest school district in the nation. And we won what we went after.
So at this point, I think we might want to take a short break because I think there's going to be a transition into talking about a lawsuit that was filed here in Youngstown. But I think it's also a connection to what's going on all over the country.
Absolutely.
So Ohio, California,
Yep.
but we're talking about black kids, African American achievement, and how we can handle
Yeah,
it.
and the one thing before you take the break that you want to leave, if you want to talk about black kids, that's where everything changes. If you want to talk about all kids, you're good to go. But when you talk about all kids, you're talking about the order of kids. So if there are 5 groups in the district, blacks are number 5. If there are 4 groups in the district, blacks are number 4. If there are 3,
Sounds like the caste system, but
it is a caste system.
we live here,
Yeah.
so we know what that means.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to tease this out a little bit.
Okay.
Just how the lawsuit, number one, affects affects what's here,
Right.
and then talk about, what should we be doing? Why are we having this conversation? And what are the next steps? Okay?
All right.
Take-
No problem.
Take 2. So I just want to make a couple of announcements about some upcoming events. Well, first of all, I want to announce that the Buckeye Review is expanding operation, and we're going to host a journalism lab for citizen correspondence. So if you're interested, if you know someone who's interested, community activist, young writer, older writer, who wants to do some research and get trained, we have a seasoned staff that can help you. We'll put you through a program, but there will be an interest information session on September 7th at 7 p.m. If you're interested in that, pick up a new copy of the Buckeye Review, or we'll put the information in the chat or in the notes for you, so you can pick up that information and you can register for that September 7th information session. Pass it along to your friends. It's going to be some exciting things happening with our expanded operations. Also, Nikki Giovanni is going to be in town on September 14th in Columbus. I'm excited about that. And also on September 16th, the Ohio Black Press is going to be with the Ohio NAACP for their statewide convention. So I want to mention those things. But I also want to mention, as I'm getting ready to bring Mr. McWilson back into the conversation, that there's a recruitment going on for African American men, recruiting black men with courage to be educational warriors. That you'll see in the Buckeye Review, but I'm saying it because on Saturday, September 10th at 8 a.m., there's going to be a Zoom call, and I'm going to ask Mr. Wilson to talk a little bit about that now.
Okay. Well, the one thing that's missing in Youngstown and in a lot of other places, it was missing in San Diego. The issue of not black males being involved, they are in various degrees doing various things. But having the courage to be a warrior is something different. You hear a lot of people speak about, well, it takes a village to raise a child. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay. That's mama's job. Who's protecting the village?
Okay.
That would be the warriors.
Gotcha.
And to be a warrior, you have to go through rites of passage. And the rites of passage, and to become a warrior, you're no longer his mother's baby. You're a warrior.
Okay.
It carries a different connotation. It means you're prepared to confront a system that for 25 years has undereducated, miseducated, debased, and degraded black children in this district by the numbers.
So you're recruiting men to be warriors
To deal with the system.
to deal with the school
Youngstown
system,
City
Youngstown
school
system.
system.
All right.
Because currently, the Youngstown City school system has designed for the future, failure into their plan.
They designed failure into the plan.
And I encourage anyone that before you call me, please read the plan.
Okay.
Because that's the problem. We don't read. You're against my friend, you're against my church, you're against my you're against my politician, you're against my sorority, you're against, That's not the issue. The issue is, can the children read at grade level?
So you're referring to not long ago, the Youngstown City School District came out of state control and into local control, and they had to do a educational improvement plan.
Correct.
And in that plan, the standards, some said, we reported, it seems like they're a little bit low. Matter of fact, they were so low that the state kicked it back and said they should change it.
Yes.
But when they changed it,
It's still low.
it was still.
Well, that's where the state comes in.
All right.
Because the reason that we set a standard, for instance, there's never been a standard set in this community by the community of what it expects from the system.
Sure, sure.
We should expect no less than 75% of our children reading at grade level and above and doing math at grade level and above.
Right, right.
That's a minimum. What is that, a C?
That's a C.
That's a C. At minimum, and that's not what you get. And so when we look at the state, and the state report card is coming out in September,
Mm-hmm.
the district is what we did the press conference on,
Okay.
which had never been done. So we were looking at what testing were they doing to the kids to get ready to take the state tests,
Mhm.
right? And look at that growth. What was that growth? Well, bluntly, for black students, 73% of them were below average grade
Mhm.
level,
Okay.
period, at the end of the year,
73% of all of the black students.
of all the black students. And that's what I reported on at the press
Okay.
conference.
And that was that's a huge number. I mean, it's like
That's-
that's beyond the critical mass. That's the vast majority.
That is. 82% of all the kids in the district, which is Mrs. Dare reported on, according to the NWA scores.
Mhm.
And so when you hear people say, well, they're using old data, we don't use any data that is not legally received through public records,
You said the NWA
which
scores.
is Northwest, NWA is Northwest Education Association.
Okay.
Right, and they do testing, so they were contracted by the district
Right.
to provide a growth assessment to see how the kids are doing every week or every quarter or every semester leading up to
So
it.
before the break, you mentioned that when we talk about education for black kids, you know, if you do a ranking with other ethnicities,
Mhm.
they always seem to be at the very, very bottom.
By design.
And you say it's by design.
I just say by design because we ran a black test here in Youngstown City Schools. We did that in San Diego.
Mhm.
A black test is that every person who has to make a decision about a request you make has to be some black person in a position of power to make that decision, whether it's the superintendent, deputy superintendent, or the principal at the school.
Mhm.
So we put in a request for 7 black men of some substance, not ex-felons, to present to the students, which they asked us for curriculum, the curriculum being the very curriculum that they were using in the school. So there was no new curriculum. But it was going to come from the perspective of how do you see George Washington?
Mhm.
Who was George Washington? Who, in fact, was Thomas Jefferson? What is he famous for? We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Mhm.
Were you a part of the we? I don't think so, because he had slaves,
Mhm.
and you weren't a part. Madison, president,
Mhm.
we the people, in order to form a more perfect, were you a part of the we?
Mhm.
So you have to ask basic questions. Those are revolutionary questions, right? Because now you've flipped the script. As a matter of fact, I tried to post this because I don't do a lot of talking on Facebook. I
Mhm.
tried to post it on Facebook, and they clapped back at me and asked me to explain it because on the flyer it said revolutionary.
Mhm.
And I had to explain that it would be revolutionary for the majority of black kids in Youngstown City Schools to read at grade level. That would be revolutionary.
Well, it would be a huge lift.
That-
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
But I want you to talk a little bit before we run out of time. Why is it that people usually throw out other reasons? It's a home. It's a home life. There's no fathers at the house, or it's poverty, or it's a social issue
Sure.
that black folks fall at the bottom. educationally?
That's the white supremacist narrative.
Okay.
Now, let me just
So
explain.
you're saying
what
that,
I
so
mean.
it's those
They-
statements are
they-
not true.
They have suborned themselves to the narrative of the white supremacists, whether they're black or not, doesn't matter, which is different than white primacy. White primacy, every white person in the United States that call themselves white are born into white primacy, privilege, and affirmative action. That's a natural birthright.
Okay.
That's the way the system is set up. But you and I both know white people who have fought for black liberation or support. So, but those people are still in that category. The ones who would do us harm are white supremacists. Whether it's a preacher, a pope, a potentate, it doesn't matter. And you have to look at them that way because their niceties of complexity are still designed to keep you at the bottom, right? And so when they buy into that, for instance, poverty, we brought to Youngstown some of the best principals in the state, and one here in Youngstown, who at 100% poverty school were scoring in the AB level.
Okay. So you
For all
debunked.
kids.
So you debunked that myth.
That
It's
myth.
not
That's right.
poverty.
And they switched to trauma.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now, if black people have been in trauma since they arrived.
Come on now.
I mean, just look at the reaction to George Floyd, Breonna
Right.
Taylor.
I mean, why?
That's trauma.
Yeah.
Okay.
The world was in trauma
Yeah,
because
I
of George
called,
Floyd.
I talked to the mayor once about this and the city council.
Okay.
And what I said to them is, I don't get it. I get the newspaper, New York Times, a whole bunch of them. I said, why is it that if you run the numbers, just run the numbers, and I did this when Jimmy Hughes I first got here. I went down to see Chief Hughes. I said, I'd like to work with your data department and look at the last 40 years of murders in Youngstown. So over a 40-year period, at no time in that 40-year period were 98% of the people in Youngstown involved in any murder. Now, why aren't you thanking those people? But you're spending all your time on the 2%,
Right. Right.
right? And scaring the rest of the people. And some of them are leaving because, boy, that's a dangerous place.
Right. Right.
Well, I've been here. I haven't had any of those problems since I arrived. And a lot of other people.
So we spend our time, our attention, and our money on things that are not bringing us what we need.
Yes.
So to bring it back to education, because
And this is education.
well, it certainly is, but I want to, you're recruiting men to
Yes.
come to engage, or is it gonna be
Men with the
trained?
courage
Sure.
to become warriors to take on the system.
Okay.
Because I'm going to tell you this clear and simple. Youngstown City Schools, a plan that Mr. Jennings wrote when he was CEO, if you remember, was 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a lot of hullabaloo. Matter of fact, there was a front page article on it. New plan, old debate. It was covered. Then they said, well, it's really a 5-year plan. And then legislature passed Bill 110. You can get it back, but over 3 years you're going to do, okay, which plan are you dealing with? What time frame are you looking at? If men got involved in the running of this school system and demanded one thing, educational excellence and the relentless pursuit thereof, and make them define it, right? Make them define it, because we can define it, right? And we have experts, because you had to prosecute this as though you're going to court. So who are your expert witnesses? In what area of expertise? Can they deal with the issue of poverty? Can they look at trauma? Are they dealing with trauma? Yes. Are they dealing with poverty? Yes. They're 100% poverty. But how are they scoring in reading and math? A, B, C level. So those are the experts. And they make, in practicality, what research says can be done if the child receives the proper support from the adults. Now, when I say adults, that's all of the adults in that child's ecosystem. Whether that's parents have responsibility, teachers have responsibilities, administrators. But see, I find some teachers don't get the support they need from administration, and therefore they don't perform at the level they should. They are underpaid and should be paid more.
Here.
Those are just basic facts. But when you can have a CEO making $190,000 with a $10,000 bonus and gets an excellent performance, and the kids come out at an F level, there's something wrong with that picture. Not because you don't want the person to get the money. You want to see the end result represent the amount of money people receive.
Clearly, this is not new.
Not new.
Not new. Teachers teach, leaders make a lot of money, black kids get left behind.
That's true. So how do you break that cycle? It needs to be a revolution. You can only do that with warriors.
So
they're missing in action.
the warriors are missing in action, or the...
You know what that means in the military.
Well, I mean... right.
They're MIA, right?
Right. So give us a picture of what are you going to be asking men to do?
Okay. The first thing I would ask them to do is understand the numbers. That'll take 30 minutes.
Okay.
The second thing you have to ask them is then speak to what they want to do about the numbers. Do they want to protect black children? It's as simple as that. And the second thing is, here's a playlist of experts who are doing for our kids what we're saying is possible. They're called best academic practitioners. And we simply send them a playlist and give them a week to review it. Listen to those experts. These are principals, including Monica Jones, who's right here in town, Sharonda Smith out of Cleveland, out of Akron, out of Steubenville, all of these people that we brought to town.
Sure.
And they agreed to participate for free, just to make this playlist, right? And so we know what's possible, and we know why it's not working. No one has demanded, no one has set a standard, no one's reviewed the data on an ongoing basis and say, look, Joe, yo, bro, you're not doing your job. Period. Things change because this is the community that these children grow up in. If they are not defended, they're going to do at their age what they've learned how to do. That's just, adults are always teaching, children are always learning. Period.
So that we learn what we live.
That's right.
So I want to make sure, because obviously this is a conversation that needs to continue or follow up, not only with you, but we want to talk to the superintendent and the leaders in the district and other leaders to talk about what needs to occur. Now I'll just say a point for me, just for understanding what goes on, that I know that you mentioned Monica Jones. She's a principal of Youngstown Early College, and Youngstown Early College is rated excellent every year. The kids come from Youngstown, so they come from the same households.
But remember, they're poor. They're in
poor.
Trauma.
They're black.
They're in trauma.
So the stereotypes don't fit, and they don't need to fit on any of our kids.
That's right.
But we need to work through, figure out what the answers are. Can we replicate what Monica does? When I say we, as a community.
So let me leave you with this.
Okay.
I'm probably going to write a letter to the black media, but also to the Vindicator, Business Journal, WKBN, WFMJ, to sponsor a debate by debate rules on why black children in Youngstown City schools are always at the bottom. Why is it that black people in position of power do not want to talk about
I think that's a good idea. I think we'll end on that idea because it's a conversation that requires expertise, right? It's history, data, research,
money.
And money.
7.8 million.
So I'll be willing to, ask some partners to co-host or sponsor a debate or at least a conversation, because I think everybody we talk to, we love the kids, we love the city, they should do excellent. I know the superintendent, he studied black history, he's a good guy, right? I know some of the principals, but if there's things that need to occurred that we all need to know, then I think we need to know that. So
I will leave you on one note. These 2 pieces of paper that I'm working on now, and I'm going to ask for your 1 or 2 opinion. All you have to do is give me a number 1 or a number 2.
Okay.
As to which one that you prefer, because I'm in the process, and that's the cover to a book.
Oh, this is the cover.
It's the cover to a book.
Okay. This is the cover.
Well, it's one of the
Is
covers.
it private?
I have to make a decision.
Okay. I'll take a look at it too. Betrayal of African American descendant students,
Yeah.
case study by a former student, parent, and grandparent. Okay.
I was a student here.
Oh, okay.
I was a parent here. I was a
Gotcha.
grandparent of kids here.
Well.
They didn't even know I had grandkids in the school system.
I didn't know you were old enough to have grandparents,
Hey.
grandkids.
I have a great grandchild now.
Okay. On that note, I should be listening to you.
All right.
Thank you so much to our audience for listening. I know it's a lot, so that's why we'll be back. We do this every week, and we eventually, as soon as we recruit some citizen correspondents, we're going to be doing it every day. But in the meantime, pick up a Buckeye Review, stick with us, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and make sure that you are registered to vote.
And vote.
Your vote, if you're religious, is like a prayer, right? Your vote is an expectation that what you're asking for, good government, will occur. And good government includes good schools,
Yep.
fire, ambulance. We
Yes.
didn't talk about that, another conversation.
Right.
But thank you to Mr. Jimma McWilson.
Thank you
I
for
appreciate
inviting
your
me.
research and all your information. And thank you to our listeners and followers. Again, my name is Dr. Mike McNair, Buckeye Review. Stay tuned. We'll be back.